If you were visiting Earth from another planet, your rational mind just wouldn't understand how singing dunes and moving balls of lightning were scientifically possible. I bet you'll feel like these images are just stills from your favorite sci-fi movie. You better hope you never find yourself alone near Catatumbo River in Venezuela during one of its lightning storms. Because if you were, you'd be surprised to find out that lightning works both ways, meaning it can come from the sky and from the ground. Terrifying, I know. Scientists think that in this case, it probably happens because of a high presence of uranium in the bedrock. But it can also happen due to cold and warm air currents that meet around that area. This makes the electric field get all charged up and the bolt flips, traveling from ground to cloud. Scientists even have a fancy name for it: upward lightning. This special place called Catatumbo River became famous because of its light shows. Actually, the name means House of Thunder in the local language. This phenomenon happens for up to 160 nights a year, and it can last around 9 hours a day. When scientists counted, they realized that the area could produce anything from 16 to 40 flashes of lightning per minute. Now, you've probably heard of Marco Polo, the 13th century Venetian merchant and world traveler. Well, in one of his voyages, he came across what he could only describe as singing dunes. The dunes literally started rumbling, like they were playing drums, and freaked him out so much he thought it was the works of evil, invisible entities messing with him. Fast forward to our times, and scientists have discovered how sand dunes produce these rumbles. A team of scientists studied a singing dune in Morocco. They chose a large, crescent-shaped one that makes noise all year round. If the wind is right, this dune can sing a few times every afternoon. It turns out that the wind forces sand to accumulate at the top of the dune until the angle of the slope reaches a tipping point of about 35 degrees. This accumulated sand drops down like an avalanche, and that's what produces a sound. The sand needs to be dry enough for the singing to happen, though. They're like nature's boombox. Isn't that something? This next one might be the most disturbing of them all. First, you'll see a flash of lightning, then a thundering boom, and finally, a curious light floating through the air and bouncing off surfaces like a white electric ball. Would you also hide under your blanket if you witnessed something like this? That's what an old lady did when she witnessed this from bed in her Chicago apartment. It turns out, people have been swapping their own ball lightning stories for hundreds of years. An English monk's report from the early 1000s might be the oldest version of these accounts. It talks about a fiery globe descending from a storm cloud and falling into the river Thames. The thing is, scientists aren't entirely sure what causes it, but one theory involves lightning striking silica-rich soil. This can vaporize silica, creating tiny particles bound by electrical charges. When these particles react with oxygen, they produce glowing orbs, which can last a few seconds. Some other theories say that it can be linked to miniature black holes, or even hallucinations. But the silica explanation is the best contender so far. What they know for sure is that ball lightning is often linked to stormy weather. If you'd wake up in the middle of a wintry night and saw these lights, you'd probably think otherworldly people were invading our world. Or you'd feel like one of the lucky people who got to see the northern lights during your lifetime. But none are correct. These beautiful shafts of pastel-colored light were photographed by a guy in Ontario, Canada. They happen when tiny, flat ice crystals that usually reside up in the atmosphere float closer to the ground. They're sometimes called columns of violet light, and they reflect light from sources like streetlights or cars. These reflections stretch into tall, colorful columns that look like they're glowing in the sky. The best part is that it's mostly an optical illusion. The pillars aren't really in the air. They're just a trick of light bouncing off the ice. Somewhere near Buffalo, New York, you'll find a surreal combination of the fire and water elements. This phenomenon is called the Eternal Flame Falls, precisely because it never stops burning, even if it's so near the water. This is due to a chemical reaction where gas leaks out of the ground and combusts with the air. It's one out of a few hundred natural eternal flames around the world. But the 30 feet tall waterfall is probably the most beautiful one. Now, how does it get lit the first time around? Usually, eternal flames can be ignited by lightning, human activity, or something called piezoelectricity, which is basically when certain materials make electricity when you squeeze, press, or twist them. Scientists believe that Native Americans lit these flames thousands of years ago, but that's just a hunch. Have you ever imagined going for a midnight swim and suddenly finding yourself surrounded by a glowing blue haze? As if there were huge cannons of light coming out of the seabed directly into the surface. This phenomenon is rare, but it sure is magical. This chemical reaction is known as bioluminescence, and it can happen in different situations. One example is when tiny algae organisms migrate near the seashores. When these algae are disturbed, they try to defend themselves by glowing, and just happen to create the most beautiful spectacle. There's also a specific place in the world where you can see a similar phenomenon. It's in New Zealand. Hidden deep within the country's caves lie the so-called glowworms. They are the larval species of a fungus that happen to be luminescent. If you're lucky enough to tour around these caves, you'll feel like you're floating inside an underground galaxy. The sky can create lots of different cool phenomena, and this specific one is called a crown flash. If you were seeing it with your own eyes, you'd see a column of light jumping or dancing near the top of a cumulus nimbus cloud. Think of cumulus nimbus as massive, towering clouds that look like fluffy mountains. These are the clouds that usually announce thunderstorms, lightning, and heavy rain. Now, although you'd probably think crown flashes looked like some supernatural energetic door opening to the heavens, this is a very scientific phenomenon. It happens when sunlight reflects off tiny ice crystals inside the cloud. But here's the cool part. Those ice crystals aren't just floating around randomly. They're moving because of shifts in the cloud's electric field. As the field changes, the ice crystals realign, and the light they reflect moves too. That's why the crown flash looks like it's flickering or waving. Crown flashes don't happen all the time. You need a thundercloud with the right conditions, lots of sunlight, ice crystals, and a strong electric field. If you ever spot one, consider yourself lucky. It's like nature showing off a rare light trick. We usually see ever-burning hills in sci-fi movies, but this one is real. Located in the Arctic region of Canada, the so-called Smoking Hills is an unmatched sight on our planet. And here, things get even a little science fiction-y, since some minerals that exist in these hills were only ever found in a few places on our planet and outside it, like on the surface of Mars. The ground of Smoking Hills has been releasing smoke for at least a couple hundred years, non-stop. Explorers thought the area was home to an active volcano, but that was not the case. As science explains, the soil in the area is formed by sulfur and coal, and when they're in contact with oxygen, they spontaneously ignite, releasing constant smoke. I just warn you, don't be getting any touristic ideas. The environment is extremely hostile to human life, as the smoke is toxic and its temperatures are dangerously high.
Finally, the thunderstorm has passed, and it's all sunny again. No clouds in sight, no need to spend the day indoors, after all. Suddenly, a lightning bolt slams into a tree just 100 feet away. Whoa, what just happened? Can storms be invisible? Is Thor fighting someone near your home? No. This is an exceedingly rare but very real weather phenomenon that scientists call bolts from the blue. Sounds unbelievable and a bit scary? Well, today I'm talking about nature's weirdest and deadliest jump scares. But first, back to science class for a second. What causes thunderstorms and lightning in the first place? On a sunny day, the ground gets toasty and the air near it heats up. As this warm, moist air rises, it enters colder layers of the atmosphere. The moisture condenses into tiny water droplets, and when they gather, well done, now we have a big puffy cloud. But sometimes the rising air just won't stop. It keeps going until you get one of those towering thunderclouds called cumulonimbus. Inside them, it's chaos. Raindrops, ice chunks, and water are tossed around like they're in a big sky blender. When those little bits bump into each other, they trade tiny electrical charges. All that bumping and crashing swaps those charges until the whole cloud turns into a charged-up battery. Positive up top, negative down below, ground buzzing underneath. Then, boom! The imbalance breaks and a lightning bolt tears through the sky. In a split second, it superheats the air to around 50,000 degrees Fahrenheit, which is hotter than the surface of the sun. The air explodes outward so fast that it creates a shock wave, and that's the starting sound of thunder that wakes up your dog. Normally, all this happens right under the storm. Since it can look scary, you know it's time to run inside. However, lightning doesn't always like these rules, and that's when we get the so-called bolts from the blue. Under normal lightning, these launch from the very top of a storm, travel sideways through the upper atmosphere, and then dive down, sometimes up to 30 miles away. They can be extremely dangerous. That's why experts recommend the 30-30 rule. If lightning and thunder are less than 30 seconds apart, get inside and wait 30 minutes after the last rumble. This all sounds frightening, but remember, the odds of being struck by lightning are already incredibly small. And when it comes to a bolt from the blue, it's so rare that scientists don't even have enough data to calculate the odds. Now, most lightning stays within 10 miles of the storm where it originated. When it travels more than 60 miles, we call that a mega flash. In 2017, scientists recorded one spanning 510 miles from Texas to near Kansas City, twice as wide as California. Now, let's talk about another weather-related surprise that comes out of nowhere. They are called dry microbursts, bursts of air that can cause chaos. Here's how it works. High up in the thunderstorm, raindrops begin to fall. But as they drop through a layer of very dry air, something strange happens. They evaporate before reaching the ground. And when that happens, it cools the surrounding air really fast. Now, that cold air is suddenly way heavier than the air below it, so it drops like a rock, picking up speed as it falls. These wind blasts can reach speeds of over 100 miles an hour, hit an area less than 3 miles wide, and last only 5 to 15 minutes. But in that time, they can flatten trees and hurl dust like a low-flying sandstorm. That hurricane-force wind blasts straight downward from the clouds, then slams into the ground and spreads out in all directions like a mini shockwave, like the ground was hit by an invisible air meteor. Such microbursts are especially dangerous for airplanes during takeoff and landing. A sudden downward burst of air can tilt, destabilize, or even flip a plane if it's low enough. First, the outflow gives it a tailwind, making the plane lift. But just seconds later, the wind shifts to a powerful headwind, cutting lift and forcing the plane down dangerously fast. In other words, it gets pushed forward, then slammed down, then slowed down too much, all while it's trying to land. The pilot only has a few seconds to react, and there's not much room under the plane to recover. It's like the sky's just changing its mind 3 times in a row, and the plane gets caught in the middle. Microbursts were once such a mystery that pilots had almost no defense. But after several major accidents in the 1980s, studying them became a top priority in meteorology. Today, airports use Doppler radar and wind shear alerts to catch them before they occur. For the next weather trap, imagine yourself walking through a peaceful valley at sunset. The air is still, the sky is clear, everything feels calm, almost too calm. Then, suddenly, the temperature drops in just a few minutes. You actually feel the cold sliding down the hills like fog, creeping along the ground and pulling around your ankles like an invisible air creature with cold hands. Your breath becomes visible, your hands start to burn from the chill, and you just stand there confused. This phenomenon is called the cold air pool. Basically, when the sun goes down, the ground cools fast. The air right above it cools too. Cold air is heavier than warm air, so it slides downhill like invisible water. If you're in a valley, basin, or any kind of bowl-shaped area, that cold air settles at the bottom and just sits there because there's no wind to push it away. If the skies are clear, the air keeps getting colder and colder overnight. And since the cold air can't escape the valley, the temperature can plummet to record lows, even if places just a few miles away have perfectly normal temperatures. This isn't just chilly, it can be life-threatening. In winter, this effect is stronger and more dangerous because from the beginning, the air is already cold, so we have extreme lows. In a place called Park Sinks, Utah, temperatures have dropped as low as minus 69 degrees. That's colder than some parts of Antarctica. And it happens without warning. One moment it's sweater weather, and a few minutes later it's, man, I hope I still have fingers. If cold air pools are like nature's freezer, then strudels are its drain holes. They form in spring when snowmelt floods river deltas over sea ice. The incoming freshwater floods the surface, finds cracks or weak spots, and drains downward in narrow jets. Think of vertical whirlpools cutting through the ice. This drainage is driven not by salty water trickling up, but by the pressure of the flooded layer pressing through cracks and seal breathing holes. From above, they spin into perfect spirals, almost too pretty for something that can rip through sea ice. These jets can dig into the seafloor, creating holes that can be several feet deep. This is risky if you're on the ice and could be a problem for any underwater pipelines nearby. Terrifying if you're too close, but mesmerizing if you could see them from above. Now these weather quirks are interesting, but there are more. Ever heard of ball lightning? A glowing orb floating across your room, humming, and then pop. No one really knows how it works, but it's been spotted on planes and in kitchens. Then there are sprites and blue jets, bolts of lightning that shoot upward from storms into the stratosphere like sky tentacles or neon jellyfish. Gorgeous, spooky, and visible only from above. Not to forget Haboob, a massive wall of dust that rolls across the desert like it's auditioning for a disaster movie. One minute it's sunny, the next it's midnight at noon, with grit on your teeth and sand in your eyebrows. But these are for some other time. The bottom line is, nature is beautiful and unpredictable. Sometimes it launches a lightning bolt from a sunny sky, or turns calm weather into a down-blasting wind hammer. So, next time you complain about the bad weather, remember, at least it's not trying to ambush you with unexpected freezing or bolts of lightning without clouds and rain in sight. Good luck! The surface of this river looks as if it's covered with fish scales. Is it a giant water dragon or some other ancient monster? Not really. The explanation is much more boring, but surprising at the same time. Now let's start from the very beginning. This is the Shantung River in China, and this is Hangzhou Bay, its estuary, which is the tidal mouth of a river, where the tide meets the stream itself. Now this area is home to the world's largest tidal bores. A tidal bore is a strong tide that pushes up the river against the current. In the Shantung River, such tidal bores can reach a whopping 29 feet. The area regularly sees trains of large waves moving upstream. But in 2021, during a scientific expedition, experts discovered a marvelous natural phenomenon unique to this area. Sometimes, the tide comes in swirling waves. That's the famous fish scale tide. Thing is, this region has rotating currents, which means that the tide doesn't just move inland and then simply reverses its direction. Instead, a rotating current easily changes direction without changing its speed. This makes the Shantung River perfect for winding up with groups of waves crashing into one another at oblique angles, which is like a cross sea. Let's speak about this phenomenon now. These four-sided wave patterns in the ocean look mesmerizing, as if the ocean deities decided to play a round of giant chess. But what you observe is the phenomenon known as square waves. They're often called cross-sea and grid waves too. The thing is, most waves reach the shore and break parallel to the coastline. But in some regions of the world, these waves create a chessboard-like pattern on the surface of the water. When you look at these waves from above, you might think there's an underwater grid forming square-shaped ripples. But square waves aren't caused by anything taking place beneath the surface of the water. They're the result of the way the water moves. Weather patterns in certain regions make waves form at different angles. When two opposing swells crash, we've got this unique pattern on our hands. However beautiful and unusual this natural phenomenon is, it's also extremely dangerous. If you spot square waves while swimming, get out of the water immediately. Square waves usually come hand in hand with rip currents, incredibly strong currents flowing seaward from the shore. Plus, square waves can reach 10 feet in height, and that's not something even an experienced swimmer can deal with. So, we're done with the seas for the moment and are moving to the largest active volcano in Europe. It's Etna, and it continues to amaze us with jaw-dropping smoke ring shows. But wait, people live there. Isn't it time to evacuate them? The volcano looks like it's about to go off. Well, let's calm down. There's no need to fuss. Experts assure us that the production of such rings doesn't mean that a big eruption is on the way. These white smoke rings are made of water vapor and are generated by bursts of gas bubbles inside a narrow duct over a magma chamber. Etna was even nicknamed the Lady of the Ring, and currently the volcano is breaking its own records. For example, in the year 2000, the volcano produced around 5,000 such smoke rings. According to researchers, no other volcano on Earth produces as many volcanic vortex rings as Etna. Southeast Crater is especially active. It emits countless beautiful vapor rings. Now, don't look away from the sky. You might witness something like what the residents of New Jersey saw recently. A massive fireball lit up the sky in the Garden State and surrounding areas. A meteor falling to the ground looked like a bright streak of light, and the folks of several New Jersey towns, as well as some parts of New York, Pennsylvania, and Connecticut, reported this show to the American Meteor Society. Security camera footage posted online by some witnesses of this awesome phenomenon showed the flash dash across the sky within a couple of seconds at 3:43 a.m. Another unbelievable phenomenon captured recently is one of the rarest in the world and almost impossible to see with the unaided eye. A West Australian photographer was shooting a wet season thunderstorm just outside of Derby when he managed to film on camera a few red sprites. He said later that they were gone in the blink of an eye. He described red sprites as huge, feathery tendrils of purple and red and specks of bright red. Red sprites are massive electrical discharges that take different shapes and look like reddish-orange flashes. They last for just fractions of a second and occur after super strong lightning strokes. Even though they're usually caused by the lightning discharges between a thundercloud and the ground, sprites soar up into the air up to 60 miles. Interestingly, this phenomenon had been dismissed and considered to be fiction for decades, until scientists finally caught it on film. Since that time, red sprites have been recorded regularly. Catatumbo lightning is the world's longest lightning storm. The heart of the storm, which repeats every year, is over the mouth of the Catatumbo River, where it empties into Lake Maracaibo in Venezuela. This storm towers higher than a regular one. Catatumbo lightning occurs for 140 to 160 nights a year, lasts for 9 hours a day, and produces 16 to 40 lightning flashes per minute. Maybe you've heard of how they say lightning doesn't strike the same place twice? Well, Catatumbo doesn't seem to know about this rule. Or at least, it doesn't prevent storm clouds from gathering in the very same place year after year. A fellow hill walking in the UK has captured amazing shots of a weather phenomenon that was called an angel in the sky. So look at it. This scene was captured with a Canon 5D Mark IV camera. The silhouette, though, isn't some non-material thing. It's just the shadow of the photographer at the center of a circular rainbow. Mesmerized, the photographer took a few more photos and continued walking. Such an effect is produced when an observer stands above the upper surface of a cloud. It can also be a mountain or some other high ground, and the sun should be shining from behind their back. When the observer sees their shadow, the light is reflected in such a way that a bizarre circular glory appears around the point directly opposite the sun. Another cool sky phenomenon was witnessed in Auckland. Look at this. What does it remind you of? I bet you think it looks like a spaceship from a different civilization. but it's just a rare meteorological phenomenon. Everyone who saw the circular cloud formation said it looked like a hole in the cloud cover, and some also added that a small rainbow was visible inside. This phenomenon is known as a fall streak hole and a punch hole cloud. Such a formation is quite rare. Even experts have seen it just a few times throughout their careers. What happens here is some sort of atmospheric disturbance within supercooled water, the disturbance being an airplane or something similar. As a result, the supercooled water rapidly turns into ice crystals. Since the crystals are heavier than the surrounding cloud, they fall out, leaving a hole behind. The process happens high up in the atmosphere and is quick. It takes only minutes or so. Well, let's get back to the ground and examine the phenomenon people in the US can witness. It's an extremely rare one. Nothing similar has happened like this since 1803. What is it? Billions of cicadas from two different broods are merging together from the underground after more than 200 years. All these loud singing insects belong to two distinct families of periodical cicadas. One group emerges to the surface every 13 years, and the other every 17 years. It's a rare occurrence when the cycles of both groups align. This year, this once-in-a-lifetime event is taking place since two groups with different cycles are emerging at the same time. These broods are known as Brood 13 and Brood 19. They have been seen and heard across the southern U.S. and as far north as Illinois.
Mother Nature is caring, loving, and providing, but sometimes she's also terrifying. These Reddit users have seen her dark and spooky side. They've been through the worst, and fortunately, they all lived to tell the tale. The question is, are you ready to face it and learn about her chilling, uncanny secrets? Now, imagine it's a beautiful Sunday, and you decide to do some gardening. You grab your tools and head outside, but once you start digging to plant some flowers, your hand touches something slippery, yet also sticky. And the worst part is, it's moving. You're shaking with fear, but find the courage to look at what it is. You become filled with a great relief, because fortunately, that's not a snake. It's an enormous earthworm. Well, we don't know why this Reddit user was digging the earth up, but that's exactly what they found. And if you take a look at the photo carefully, you'll notice that it's not the entire length of the worm. Some part of it is still underground, so it's actually even longer than it appears to be. Here are two fun facts about earthworms for you. The first one is they can regenerate to some degree if you cut them in two. And in some species, you can even end up with two worms. And the second one is, the longest earthworm ever recorded was 21 feet in length when naturally extended. So, this guy hadn't even seen the worst. Take a look at these two crows standing on a fence. Do you notice that one of them is hiding a bone in its beak? Well, it's kind of spooky. In almost every Gothic novel, crows and ravens are bad omens. Well, we all know this is just superstition. But it may actually have originated from the fact that crows are extremely intelligent and cunning. They can recognize individual human faces. They can gossip about you to the other crows. They use tools to solve problems, and they can plan for the future. But the most interesting thing is, they can hold grudges against people who are cruel to them, and even pass those to their offspring. The same goes for people who are kind to them as well. Once they love you, they'll be your friend for a lifetime. So, this Reddit user must have done something right to be rewarded by these crows. Now, let's take a look at the photo that the next Reddit user shared. The tiny pearl-like things you see on the kitchen window are no gemstones, they're actually eggs. But of what exactly? That we may never know, but plenty of Reddit users in the comment section say they might be moth eggs, or stink bug eggs. Either way, it seems like the person who posted the photo needs to do some thorough cleaning to get rid of them. If you're having the same kind of problem at your house, here's a tip on how to get rid of moths. Wash and scrub any areas you found larvae or eggs with a vinegar and water solution. If you have stink bugs, add dish soap to that mixture. Okay, this next photo was not originally shared on Reddit, but it's certainly worth mentioning when it comes to how scary nature can be. The photo is captured by a woman driving home in Minnesota. And let me tell you, this is not photoshopped or edited in any way. I bet it reminds you of that wave scene in Interstellar, right? One Reddit user even called the photo Cloudception. Guess all of us can agree there's some sort of Christopher Nolan movie vibe going on there. The lady who took it, on the other hand, officially named it Ocean in the Sky. Well, that fits too. One meteorologist said the photo is so rare and unique that there are clouds in it that even she herself had never seen before. So it's no wonder it went viral on social media platforms. Let's be honest, each one of us probably drew a lightning bolt on our forehead and pretended to be Harry Potter at least once in our lives. But the next photo one Reddit user shared might change the way you view lightning bolts. The truck you see there, which belongs to their coworker, got struck by lightning. But as you might have guessed, the damage was done by fire. The user says the truck burned for about 10 minutes at a super high temperature before it was put out by fire extinguishers. So it was not instant damage. To all the comic book fans out there, this is your reminder to not attempt any lightning bolt experiments to become the Flash. This wind turbine looks so sad it's almost heartbreaking to look at, right? Well, the story behind it is upsetting indeed, but in a scary way. The Texan Reddit user who posted this photo explains that the wind turbine was hit by a tornado. But these comments might cheer you up and get your mind off of how frightening tornadoes can be. One Reddit user says the wind turbine looks like its mom told it can't go to the thing. Another one suggests that the tornado took things personally and got revenge on the wind turbine for thinking it can harness the power of the wind. And one other describes the wind turbine to look like a giant robot palm tree. What's worth mentioning here is that it's a good thing the blades of the turbine didn't snap off, because if they had, the consequences would have been much more destructive. This next one might be the weirdest yet. Those toes don't belong to a forest gnome or any other fantastical creature, even though this photo sure looks like it's out of a fairy tale. And I know you're thinking about it, so let me just clarify that it's not a zombie trying to crawl its way out of the ground either. These are actually a type of fungus that is commonly known as dead man's fingers. They can generally be found in forests or any other woodland area, usually growing from the bases of rotting or injured tree stumps and decaying wood. They're fairly common in the UK, Ireland, mainland Europe, and parts of North America. The funny thing about them is the fingers vary in appearance at different stages of their life cycle, so in that manner, it's like a real human being whose body changes as they grow older. You can probably tell by the way it looks that it's very dangerous to eat one. They're very poisonous, so good thing the Reddit user who posted this photo didn't try to get a taste of it. Even Ant-Man couldn't handle this wasp. This Reddit user woke up one day only to find one monstrous wasp in their basement. Look at that giant stinger it has! It almost seems like no beekeeping clothing would protect you from it. This species of wasp is called cicada hawks, which is due to the fact that they hunt cicadas and provision their nests with them. They can be found in the eastern and Midwest US, as well as in southern parts of Mexico and Central America. Female cicada hawks use their stings to paralyze their prey, rather than to defend their nests. Unlike most other wasps and bees, they do not sting unless they're handled roughly. On the other hand, male cicada hawks only fight with other insects and cannot sting. And in case you're wondering, they're generally not aggressive towards humans and usually fly away when swatted at. Phew! The last Reddit user we have for you today used to keep their duck eggs in the pantry. One day, they went and checked the place after hearing a lot of noise coming from there. And what they found was 2 snakes wrapped around the eggs. Well, at least the ones that the snakes didn't eat yet. But the crazy thing is, when the Reddit user got rid of them both and came back, they found another one in there. And this time, there weren't any eggs left. If only they could speak Parseltongue, things would be so much easier.
Hurricanes can be a lot scarier than we often realize, especially since they can actually trigger earthquakes. This surprising and frightening phenomenon, known as storm quakes, was discovered completely by accident not too long ago. It started with scientists trying to find out more about low-frequency earthquakes. We're talking about those earthquakes that are so weak that we can't actually feel the tremor. See, beneath our feet, the Earth is constantly vibrating in subtle, unceasing ways that we can't hear or see without the right equipment. This geologic hum, so to speak, is driven by the movement of oceans, which covers about 70% of our planet's surface. Scientists have found that this hum may actually provide useful records of environmental happenings. To figure out where it's coming from, experts used equipment known as seismometers. You can think of these devices as little ears pressed to the ground. They can pick up all sorts of vibrations, like fans jumping up and down at their idol's concert, airplanes flying by, or even super distant earthquakes shaking the ground. Very low-frequency earthquakes are hard to track over long distances because the signals they produce can look different on different measuring devices. To solve this problem, experts came up with a way to track these signals by combining readings from smaller areas, kind of like putting together a puzzle. But while doing this, they stumbled upon a strange set of events that looked a bit like the earthquakes they were studying, but were not exactly the same. The first weird thing they noticed was that this specific phenomenon was seasonal. It never happened between May and August, for example. That is completely different from earthquakes, which can pretty much happen any time of the year. The second strange thing is that earthquakes usually occur more in the western part of the United States, where the ground moves along cracks in the surface. But these new strange vibrations spread not just along the west coast of North America, but also over to the east side. So what could be triggering this new phenomenon? What they surprisingly discovered is that many of these tremors coincided with the same time that massive storms hit North America. So we are essentially talking about a chain reaction. What happens is that during a specific season, hurricanes or heavy storms can transfer energy into the oceans, creating very strong waves. These waves then interact with the solid Earth, producing intense seismic activity. These bursts of energy that are born from massive storms can radiate thousands of miles across continents, leading to what we now call storm quakes. It is believed that this phenomenon can trigger earthquakes at a magnitude of up to 3.5 on the Richter scale. This means it can be felt by many people, but normally doesn't cause any damage. But that doesn't mean we can all be relaxed now, as ocean waters can indeed increase the intensity of hurricanes. Just like what happened with the frightening Hurricane Milton, which recently left a path of destruction across Florida. The blue-purplish zone you're looking at is Hurricane Milton, seen from a satellite perspective. On October 9th, this hurricane sustained winds of 155 miles per hour and lashed the region with heavy rainfall, damaging winds, and life-threatening storm surges. Estimates show that the losses could be up to $34 billion, which could make it one of the costliest storms in United States history. What happened with Hurricane Milton was pretty tricky. It all started with some record hot water in the Gulf of Mexico. That warm water acted like a power-up, giving this hurricane the energy it needed to grow. And then, there was also this process called eye wall replacement that helped it get bigger too. We'll get to that in a moment. So as Hurricane Milton approached the coast, something unusual happened. It crossed paths with a fast-moving air current called the jet stream, which flows high up in the atmosphere. Now normally, the winds in the northern and northwest parts of a hurricane are not as strong as those in other areas. But because of this interaction with the jet stream, the winds in these parts of the storm became much stronger than expected. At nearly every turn, Hurricane Milton surprised everyone and intensified faster than we have seen in ages. It threatened to slam both Florida's west and east coasts with a dangerous surge of water, putting the bustling area of Tampa Bay, which is home to over 3 million people, at serious risk. So how did Milton become such a major problem? Well, the problem started in the eastern Pacific Ocean. Usually, hurricanes follow a fairly predictable path, spinning off of Africa's coast, sailing across the Atlantic, and gaining strength in the warm Caribbean waters. But Milton had a twist in its origin story. It began as the remnants of a tropical depression that crossed over the Yucatan Peninsula and met a stalled front in the Gulf. Once Milton got going, it didn't hold back. But when it hit those record-high ocean temperatures, it was like giving it an energy drink. The warm water and humid air were the perfect ingredients for a hurricane on the rise. Quickly, Milton's wind speeds increased by 92 miles per hour, so it went from a tropical storm to a Category 5 hurricane in less than 2 days, which is basically insane and off the charts. And if that wasn't enough, Hurricane Milton also went through this thing called eye wall replacement. Now, hurricanes spin around a mostly clear eye in the center. But overnight, Milton started forming new bands of rain on its outer edges, creating a second ring around its eye. This process helped Milton grow even bigger, spreading out the wind speeds and giving it a larger footprint. It's kind of like shedding its skin and getting ready to become even more powerful. Hurricane Milton also had this little wobble in its path, which changed where it was heading. You can think of it like a spinning top that gets nudged and wobbles a bit before finding its balance again. That wobble meant some areas could get either hit hard or be spared from the worst of the storm. Thankfully, Hurricane Milton weakened a bit because of some tricky wind changes up in the atmosphere until it finally made landfall. After that, it moved across the peninsula and headed out to sea, quickly losing strength as it pulled away from the warmer waters. Now, even though the damage was significant, the good news, if you can call it that, is that experts were honestly expecting things to be way worse. Still, it raises a question. How close was Milton's wind speed to the maximum? Or, in other words, is there a limit to how strong a hurricane can get? Well, the answer is yes, there is a speed limit for hurricane winds, but it's not a set number. Right now, the strongest the storm can get is around 200 miles per hour. But that maximum speed can change depending on many factors, like the heat in the ocean. Think of the ocean as the fuel for hurricanes. The warmer the water, the more fuel these storms have to work with. Experts believe that as the oceans continue to warm, they can ramp up the wind speeds and the impacts of hurricanes, making them a lot stronger. But other things can also help figure out how intense a hurricane can get. For example, the heat in the air and the temperature at the top of the clouds matter, as they also affect how fast heat moves from the ocean surface to the top of the storm. Some estimates suggest that maximum wind speeds could reach closer to 220 miles per hour until the end of the century. So it's definitely something that experts need to keep an eye on to help prevent future disasters. As we move forward, it's essential to keep researching and studying these storms. The more we understand them, the better we can protect ourselves and our communities.
50 ships and 20 airplanes have gone missing. Many people have disappeared, and mysterious forces might have… Oh wait, the wrong script. This Bermuda Triangle is located in Transylvania. My bad. So, once upon a time in the heart of Transylvania, there was a mysterious place that people named the Bermuda Triangle of Transylvania. Look at these twisted trees and their tangled undergrowth. It seems like some evil creature may appear from behind a tree at any moment. There might even be ghosts and mysterious creatures that came from space, as stories said. The forest became so popular in the 1960s when a man was chilling there on a warm August afternoon with his girlfriend and a couple of friends. Suddenly, his girlfriend pointed at something unusual in the sky. A man came closer to the spot where she was standing and, to his surprise, saw it too. It was a weird silver disc shining in the sky. He quickly pulled out his camera and took 4 photos before the creepy object bolted away. The object was there for a mere 2 minutes, but the man developed his film and the picture ended up being published in local papers. Many people were skeptical about this. They claimed that those were most likely some weather balloons that looked like a spaceship because they were photographed in odd lighting. But no weather balloons, blimps, or any other objects were in the sky above the forest on that day. Spooky, huh? That's not the only campfire legend from that area. Stories say that those who ventured too deep into the murky depths of this creepy place often did not return, which is how it got its nickname in the first place. There was a shepherd who entered the forest together with his 200 sheep. They were never found again. People have also been whispering stories about a 5-year-old girl who disappeared one day. She re-emerged one day, 5 years later, wearing the same clothes as the day she went missing. Plus, she hadn't aged a day. There are people who entered the forest and did manage to return, but with severe burns, high fever, and some other health issues they didn't have before. Some were sure that happened because the subsoil had lots of natural uranium with a high level of radioactivity. And according to others, it's not unusual that you come to this forest and feel like someone's watching you or your electronic devices just switch off. And now, here's something that's not a legend. The forest has a rich history. Some sources say it was home to the oldest settlement in Romania, dating all the way back to 6,500 BCE. Trees themselves are pretty mysterious. They grow in creepy spirals or have some unexpected zigzag patterns. Even though some scientists have come there to explore this phenomenon, they couldn't find the answer to why they're like this. It seems as if trees are twisting their limbs so they can reach out and grab you when you're not looking. And that's what's interesting. Each of these twisted trees spirals in a clockwise direction. But legends say lots of inexplicable things have happened in a specific part of the forest where you can't find trees or any other types of vegetation. It's a perfect circle called the clearing. The perfect name for a horror movie inspired by all these stories. The soil in this area with no vegetation has been tested, and no one has found any weird stuff or anomalies that could potentially stop plants from growing there. Some locals believe the forest has positive energy, which is why it's good to make a wish there. But many more people let their imagination run wild, telling stories about paranormal activities happening there, like mysterious spheres popping out in the middle of the forest or extraterrestrial lights. Either way, you and your castle can step aside, Dracula, because you're not the only scary story from Transylvania. Here's another reason you won't be able to sleep well tonight. The Isla de las Muñecas, or the Island of the Dolls. In the middle of the eerie and murky waters of canals near Mexico City, there's a small island. It may look charming at first, until you realize it's home to hundreds of dolls hanging from the trees and scattered throughout the overgrown vegetation. These dolls are old and decaying. They've lost their color over time, and their once cheerful faces are now twisted into expressions of despair and horror. There is a sad story behind this disturbing place. It says the island used to be home to a reclusive man who left his family more than 50 years ago to live alone on the island. He started obsessively collecting dolls that were lost in the canal. The story says he even traded products he grew to locals to get more dolls. The man didn't clean these dolls nor show any interest in fixing them. He would just decorate his island with them regardless of the state in which he found them. Even those that looked good ended up ruined due to winds and rain. They weren't just outside. His cabin was full of these scary dolls too. Many people were terrified of this place, claiming it was cursed. But others believed the dolls safeguarded the island. Moving to the suburbs of North London, where you can find the mysterious Highgate Cemetery. It's definitely not a typical resting place for the dearly departed. This cemetery has so many peculiar graves, including those of Karl Marx and Douglas Adams. But that's not what draws visitors to its gates. People come there because of the legends claiming that this place is haunted by all sorts of spooky creatures, including vampires. Yup, stories about shadowy figures hovering over graves with glowing red eyes and sharp fangs never get boring. But this place wasn't always this creepy. It was established in the middle of the 19th century, once neglected and overgrown with crumbling monuments and vegetation that seemed to swallow up graves. But these legends became popular along with the place itself in the 1970s, after the cemetery had appeared in several horror movies. Some visitors there are even self-proclaimed vampire hunters. There's this peaceful and charming village called Pluckley, just a short drive away from London. At least that's what it seems at first sight. People whisper Pluckley could be the most haunted village in England. As you go through its winding streets, you'll come across many spots legends say are haunted. Many of them are connected to the Daring family, which held the title of Lords of the Manor for over 4 centuries. What gives the sense of old times is the round-topped windows on many buildings. Legend has it, hundreds of years ago, Lord Daring escaped when his enemies captured him. He jumped through one of these windows head first. In commemoration of this pretty daring act, every window in the manor house and the village was made in the same style. Even though the manor house burned down in 1951, the legacy of Lord Daring's escape lives on in the charming village of Pluckley. Some say Pluckley is surrounded by the so-called Screaming Wood. There are many legends about paranormal events that have occurred there. There are nice walking trails in this wood, but to be honest, I'd only be brave enough to hit them during the day. And how about the Crooked Forest? It's in Poland, and it consists of 400 pine trees whose trunks take a sharp 90-degree turn and then become weirdly curved, like the letter J. Someone planted them in the early 1930s, but it's still not completely clear how all these trees got the same curve. One scientist said this looked like a typical response to gravity. Plants have a special mechanism that allows them to reorient themselves when the stem is horizontal to gravity. So, these trees may have been grown this way for making boats or furniture. Of course, human imagination goes way beyond science, so many tried to explain the existence of these trees with stories of spirits that possess these trees or mysterious creatures from space that made them this way. Okay, I'm on. Let me just grab my popcorn.